GrokTALK.
Welcome back. I like this song, so I'm going to listen to it for a second. We are GrokTALK, brought to you by GraniteGrok.com and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. Please visit them at cnht.org and visit us at GraniteGrok.com. You can donate to either or. All contributions given to GraniteGrok.com in regard to GrokTALK will go directly to software and equipment. We don't get paid for anything we do here. This is completely voluntary. We are part of that volunteer army that we talk about that likes to get the message out and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and we're going to keep talking. Are you going to say anything?
Because we believe
the guy whose mic I turned off, it's the one who's talking.
Because we believe that our civic duty as citizens is to preserve and protect the Republic and its Constitution.
All right, there we go. So now I can turn your mics back on, because I have to bring a guest on. We have with us, thank you very much for coming on the program, Jen Coffey is here on the phone. Jen, welcome to the program.
Hey, happy to be here with you guys.
Great to have you. So we had you on last time, and we talked about knives and guns and weapons. We're going to have a little different discussion today.
Yeah, just a little.
Okay.
Little change up.
You want to start with, Medicaid expansion's obviously a huge issue. We talked about it a little bit in our first segment today, and it comes up every week because the vote in the Senate is next week on Thursday, I believe. And while at least one Republican senator or two that we know of has changed their position and decided to vote against it, there's still quite a few who are in favor. And you'd certainly like to help add to our debate. What would you like to bring to the table here?
It really boggles my mind that so many of our senators are backing this, when I've heard so many of them before, even when I was a new legislator and I was just learning the process, the importance of paying attention to federal dollars in any budget or in any program, because they can get cut, because they can go away with the blink of an eye, and to remember that when that happens, the cost falls on New Hampshire taxpayers, all New Hampshire taxpayers. And that's just basic knowledge. It doesn't take a rocket scientist or any kind of a degree to figure that out.
And hasn't that been proven? Sorry.
Jen, this is Skip. And again, I say thank you for coming on the show. And you're absolutely right. And here in New Hampshire, being a very small state, 1.3 million people, we're much smaller than a lot of major cities in other states. The percentage of the federal dollars that drive the state government is just totally out of whack. What is it, about 70%, 65% of the entire budget is supplied by the federal government?
I don't know what the exact number is, but it's frightening. And to add something else like this, and the numbers that are coming out, I know Mr. Day from the Republican Liberty Caucus of New Hampshire has stated that $2.4 billion is associated with federal dollars for this. This is going to be our children, our grandchildren, probably our great-grandchildren that are going to be paying for this. And we could see the end of the New Hampshire advantage, because when those dollars go away, then we're left holding the bag, and nobody's going to want to cut any services, and no one's going to want to cut any people. So the only alternative is a new revenue source, and everything points to an income tax.
So the nearest thing to perpetual life is, of course, a government program, but the point I was going to make is, didn't they do exactly the same thing with special ed funds and other federal educational dollars, which were supposed to cover 40% or more of the costs of the programs, or in fact are covering 17%?
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly what happened with the special ed dollars. There were promises made that they were going to cover about 40% of the cost for special education for all of New Hampshire schools. And in the end, the only federal dollars that have come in is about 17%. That means New Hampshire taxpayers are paying the difference. So we've already got an increase there. We've already seen it. We've already lived it. So to put us in a situation now where that's going to increase taxation on New Hampshire taxpayers in the end, it's a given. It's common sense.
Now, one of the things that really torques me off, Jen, is that New Hampshire State Senator Chuck Morse, who was also the Senate President here in New Hampshire, says, well, New Hampshire taxpayers won't be hurt by this at all. And, you know, the last time I went to a Republican meeting, every single one of those people, I believe, is a federal taxpayer. And I get very, very upset when I start hearing Republicans starting to use the language and the language distortion of the Democrats, where they say, well, we'll protect New Hampshire taxpayers. Well, guess what? The people who are paying directly the taxes in New Hampshire are the business folks. We all pay indirectly. But to not even acknowledge and be truthful, fully and wholly truthful, to say, well, you guys are going to end up paying it anyways, and again, your kids and your grandkids are going to help pay that national debt, which that $2.4 billion over the next 10 years. Yeah, that's or whatever the time is. It's just beyond the pale. I get tired of this kind of deal, and I understand too that it's going to be off budget as well because it's federal money.
Right, and that's another federal hole. I mean, in my last term in the New Hampshire House from 2010 to 2012, we worked very hard on the budget. And one of the key things that we looked for were those kind of holes, areas that had federal dollars coming in that were going to have less or no federal dollars coming in, and ways to cut the budget so New Hampshire taxpayers wouldn't feel the burden. And we did so successfully. The governor has spoken quite frequently about the how great that budget was. And now we're in a situation where we're going to go backwards, and we're going to end up with holes again, which we just fixed. Only these kind of holes are going to be so large. The only way to fix it is going to be a new revenue source. And the easiest revenue source that'll bring in the amount of money that's needed in order to fix this hole is going to be an income tax. And the sad part about all of this, and I guess this is something that I might be more aware of than others, only in the sense that I've spent 18 years, working in medicine, is that this whole thing doesn't do anything to help the hospitals out with uncompensated care.
Jen, having been a legislator, the people who are thinking about passing this now, much falls apart for us one way or another. Even if the federal government doesn't start cutting Medicaid money, which they've already said they may start doing, which would basically take away some of what we've been promised. What kind of message do you give to legislators who are looking at this saying, oh, I'm just going to pass this now, but now 3 years down the road, they're going to have to make an even harder decision, which is, do we raise a tax? What tax do we raise? And I mean, this is mostly to Republicans, because I don't think the Democrats, with a few exceptions, they're pretty much indifferent to the whole idea of a tax because they want a broad-based tax. But what do you say to these legislators who are thinking about voting for this now, who aren't maybe thinking 3 years ahead?
I'd like them to stop and hear the words that Representative Paul Ryan shared with Mr. Day from the RLC. And that was plain and simple. As the chair of the House Budget Committee, he flat out said that they're already working to get rid of the 100% reimbursement that was promised to the states because they don't have the dollars. They're already in debt. They don't have the money. So that means they're already looking at cutting the money before the thing has actually even happened. So, I mean, look at that. That's Representative Paul Ryan. He's the chair of the committee. It's his own words. He's a Republican. If Republicans want to listen to Republicans, please listen to Representative Ryan. And he's telling you we're already talking about cutting the 100% reimbursement in the first 3 years now, before the program has even passed into law in our state, before it has even begun to change.
You know, one of the things that really drives me crazy is that I happen to be a Republican, not because I'm a Republican. In other words, I'm a Republican because I have an R next to my name, which means I'm a Republican, and, you know, we get all recursive on that. But I'm a conservative, Tea Party person who actually, the platform shows a political philosophy to which I can agree more easily than I can any other party. But I did a post a little bit ago, and I think they broke about 80% of all of the platform planks here in New Hampshire when they proposed this. You know, we see, basically in enlarged government, we're going to see more taxes. We're seeing larger bureaucracy. We're seeing the implementation of Obamacare. And no matter what New Hampshire State Senators Chuck Morse or Jeb Bradley or Nancy Stiles say, They keep telling us this is not Medicaid expansion. This is not this. It's not that. Yada, yada, yada. It's like, Jen, I don't know about you, but I'm getting tired of pigs getting painted with lipstick, and I'm being told that I'm the abusive one.
You know what? I'm tired of the whole rhetoric. I'm tired of politicians in general who are more concerned with re-election than they are with people. And that's happening at the state level, and that's happening at the federal level. And the proof of that is with, of course, Obamacare.
And, you just hit something else. I have been told that the whole reason why they're doing this is to take it off the political table because of the elections coming up. Now, I don't know about you, Jen, and I really would like you to expand upon that point that you brought up, but I'm tired of Republicans doing and advancing the agenda of the Democrats simply because they don't want to stand up and take a stand in angry waters because they won't advance the Democrat agenda. They're just letting this go through. It's like, well, we'll live to fight something else, and then they do the same thing again.
Or they use the excuse that, well, in 3 years, if the federal dollars dry up, it sunsets and it goes away. No, it's not. It's not going to go away. You're going to have this expansion. These people that are able-bodied people who had health insurance of their own, now on Medicaid, and because of the expanded coverage, and it's not going to change. And I think the thing that infuriates me the most, and you know what? It's not Republican. It's Republicans and it's Democrats that are guilty of doing it, both of them, worrying about elections instead of people. I wish for once they'd stop thinking about the next re-election and pay attention to what's happening in our state. And to your point, what I touched upon with Obamacare is we're already seeing this, and maybe a lot of your listeners don't know, I am currently in recovery from breast cancer. And when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, obviously it's frightening, it's scary, but one of my friends, a good friend of mine, who has been public, Dr. Catherine Albrecht, was instrumental in having me go to Boston to see Dana-Farber, to go to the best, to get the best opinions possible, the latest in cutting-edge technology, to have that chance to have the best care, because we're lucky to live in New Hampshire and so close to the best hospitals practically in the world. And now she, who is a breast cancer survivor herself, and let me tell you, she was diagnosed with stage 3C breast cancer. The local doctors here in the state basically told her, at this point it's not about quantity of life, it is about quality of life, and you need to get your affairs in order. So they wrote her off. She went to Dana-Farber and saw Dr. Erica Mayer, who's an oncologist at Dana-Farber, and they pulled out everything they could. In fact, Dr. Mayer has never given so many treatments to one patient. And this woman, who is a wonderful woman, a wife and a mother of young children, who was basically written off, is still here with us and almost 3 years later. And it was because of her access to Dana-Farber and to Cornell to get a study drug that saved her life. And what enabled her to do that was the Gold Star insurance that she's paying for 100% out of pocket because she's self-employed. Well, guess what she got in the mail? Can you guess? You've heard about them, right? Those lovely letters?
The cancellation notice.
Right. Thankfully, she's got a 1-year reprieve, but she's still struggling right now and trying to figure out what she's going to do now that they have taken away her health insurance. And here's the kicker. The reason she's losing her health insurance is because it doesn't meet the minimum requirement standards of Obamacare. And that minimum requirement standard it doesn't meet is to offer her maternity care. A woman who has been sterilized by her cancer care loses all of the treatment that saved her life because she doesn't have access to maternity care she can no longer use. Do you know how insulting that is to a breast cancer patient?
Extremely.
How disgusting it is?
Right. Well, I know that we're running up against Steve's halftime stop here, so I may want to continue this afterwards. So first of all, I'm glad to hear that you're sounding so feisty, and I hope you're doing well. And by the way, I want to mention that the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, nhliberty.org, is selling calendars to help raise funds. And I want to make sure that our readers know about that because I believe the proceeds are going to help with your recovery.
I have an amazing support system that I'm so blessed to be a part of, and I'm actually Miss July, and it's quite an interesting photo.
Okay, well, I am watching the clock here, so I get a couple of main points riffing off you and Skip about courage, morality, and legislation.
Okay, we're going to take a really quick break, Jen. Hang on, and we'll be back in about 60 seconds.
You ever notice how Democrats like to create problems so they can then claim to solve them? Take Medicaid expansion, for example. Even if the federal government keeps its promise to New Hampshire to pay for most of it, it'll still cost New Hampshire taxpayers tens of millions of dollars more to provide inferior care and coverage to people who, for the most part, would never have needed it if Democrats hadn't reformed health care in the first place. That's right, that real expensive reform that doesn't care if it's only affordable if you act like you don't need insurance. Well, its number one claim to fame at this point is how many more people it forced onto Medicaid. And that's only because Obamacare kicks tens of millions of people off the plan they liked and were told they could keep but couldn't. So Medicaid expansion was always part of Obamacare for a reason. Democrats knew all along that the Affordable Care Act was unaffordable and they'd need to make Medicaid bigger and more expensive, so when people got their plan kicked to the health care curb, they could still sign up for something, even if it was something as crappy as Medicaid. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
GrokTALK. We are back with Jen Coffey, who is... I'm going to turn her mic back on. And Mike had a lot of questions he wanted to bring up. I want to go right back to Mike so that he can go where he was going to go, because we were going to try to fit him in before the break. And the way we have to juggle microphones when we're on the phones, just so we don't get a lot of background noise, I had to kind of cut him short, and so we're going to come right back to Mike. Jen is on the line. Mike, why don't you go ahead and make your points, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Aside from your commercial there, Steve, which is first class and really keeps the heat on them and the light. So Jen said something and Skip said something, and they both play directly to something which I've been thinking for a long time about, basically courage, morality, and how the lack of them lead to the Leviathan state. But Skip said something that was also really important. He said about taking these things off the table before an election. Ever notice what the Democrats do? They put stuff on the table that's guaranteed to be embarrassing to Republicans and hammer it and pound on the table with Khrushchev's shoe until the Republicans go down to defeat. Why don't Republicans ever put issues that are embarrassing to Democrats on the table and hammer them until the Democrats go down to defeat? Yeah, it's so depressing.
I think a lot of people out there are doing that. I mean, look at the ads that American for Prosperity have put up of these amazing people through courage and strength to come on and talk about their own stories and how they are personally affected and living here in New Hampshire. And, the Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire have been very active. The RLC has been very active. Our legislators to stop being politicians, start being statesmen, and stop practicing trickling down economics. And this is nothing more than that.
Right. You point out that AFP's doing it, and they're doing a bang-up job to where the sitting U.S. representative in Michigan is suing to get that ad that's running there off the air because it's just so devastating. And they've also tried to do the similar things here in New Hampshire, where Sandra Rice Hawkins is complaining bitterly about this ad. But that's AFP. That's not the GOP. It's not the politicians who are already elected and have their butts in those seats.
Yeah,
They're the ones that are the cowards, Jen. And why do they do this?
And that's the point.
If I could answer it, I'd be able to think that way. I never worked that way when I was in the legislature. And I looked at every single issue and thought, worst case scenario, what could this bill do if it became a law? And I didn't care whose names were at the top of the bill, whether they were Republicans or Democrats. And you have to look at things that way, and you have to be able to work together. That's true. But when somebody would, I took the Democrats to task over the LLC tax and the campground tax. You know, is for memory, to kick people's memories back into gear. There are times that there have been members of us who did stand up and do the right thing. Unfortunately, our numbers are too small. We need good people to run for office.
We do. Good people, not just some Democrat with an R after his name.
We need people, not politicians.
Exactly. And you know, I absolutely want to praise the efforts that you made, that Dan Itzy makes all the time, that Bill O'Brien still makes, trying to bring sanity and affordability back to health care. There are so many people fighting, but the number isn't big enough. It's not a majority, which means you have to work harder than ever to persuade. You know, back to the courage and morality. You know, in terms of Democrats and Republicans in either national or state legislatures, the Democrats are dishonest in that they won't tell you what the legislation's going to do, and they try to empower the bureaucracy to enact their evil deeds for them. The Republicans are cowards in that they won't stand up and say the unpopular thing that you need to hear, and so as a result they let the Democrats get their way. And yes, Jebby and Chucky, I'm talking about you. You guys are cowards, and you are not doing the job that we put you there to do, which is to protect us from the Leviathan state and stand up for the rights of New Hampshire, which you represent, in case you'd forgotten.
I don't know any Republican senator that hasn't pledged not to raise taxes, or maybe there are some out there now that I'd missed during my period of time away from being up there. But I wish people would stop and just think. This is, you know, years ago we used to hear the term trickle-down economics. That's what this is. The Senate Medicaid Obamacare expansion bill that they're going to vote on is nothing more than trickle-down economics. Because when you pass that bill into law, and these new things that we have to pay for are on the books, and the federal dollars don't come in at a 100% rate, they come in at a partial rate or not at all, that's going to trickle right down to the end users, you and I, who are going to have to pay those taxes in order to fill that hole. There is no other way to fill it.
You know, one of the things that is a plank in the GOP platform is one that talks about self-responsibility and trying to promote that. And yet again, we see with this, and you brought it up, that people who are already providing for their own private insurance, being self-responsible to spend their own money to do this, are now going to involuntarily be put on basically the state's plan, the state being capital S versus civil society or persons. And I look at this, and Jen, one of the things that President Obama said he was going to do just before assuming office, we are 5 days from fundamentally transforming America. In your opinion, is this part of it to undermine the traditional American work ethic and replace it with the government hammock?
We are transforming our country into a socialist country. If that was the intent, then he kept to his promise. Bottom line. When you're taking things away from people that they're doing on their own, and you're forcing them to do it the government way, and you're forcing them to be on the government dole, you are a socialist. So I don't know any other way to say that.
Right. I'm absolutely convinced that was his intent. And I said in one of the earlier segments, I believe that one of the planks of Marxism is that society goes through stages and is transformed, and you need, in my opinion, a very wealthy capitalist society in order to even begin to transform. Otherwise it falls apart before you start, and I'm sure that's what they're counting on here. But in terms of this legislation, if they wrote it strictly to say, we assume that the government will pay 100% of the costs, and we will only pay out what we receive from the federal government and no more, not 1 penny more, and if the federal government stops paying, it's over. If the government pays 50%, only half the people get covered. Have a nice day. And by the way, the other side of that is the way to get this program to go away is all these people that had cheap, maybe not great health insurance before and now find just how bad Medicaid is, might just be up in arms and demanding its repeal. We can only hope.
Well, on your first point, I have to disagree with you, because once you put a bill into law, it's much harder to get rid of it. It's very easy to pass a law. It's much harder to get rid of a law. And that would be on the books. And then there would be an outpouring of outrage. Oh, my gosh, it's not going to get funded. The whole program's going to shut down. And there would come legislation to take that line out. Because it's already in there.
I got you. And really, I would much prefer it was never passed. I was just
exactly. And that's what we have to push for. We, as New Hampshire citizens, need to get off our ducks, get away from Facebook or social network and whatever it is that we're doing, pick up the phone, spend 5 minutes calling your senator and speaking to them person to person about why you don't want this bill to pass. And you brought up another point about the insurance, about people not having good coverage and being forced onto this program. Dr. Albrecht had Cadillac insurance. It didn't cover maternity. She didn't need maternity. She needed good quality cancer care to save her life, to be here, to be a mom to her young children. She had Cadillac insurance that not only covered her going to Boston, to Dana-Farber, but also covered her getting a treatment at Cornell University once a month that costs about $500. The new and only plan in the state of New Hampshire, and I don't think enough New Hampshire citizens realize this, cuts us off from Boston. We have to Mass Eye and Ear, who specialize in things like macular degeneration, to Dana-Farber and all the cancer treatment, to Boston Children's Hospital, all of those places that we live a stone's throw away from the best in the world, that people fly in from other countries to go to. We don't have access. If you end up on the New Hampshire Anthem plan, the only one that you can get, if you're one of the 20-plus thousand people like Dr. Albrecht who got the cancellation letter, you can't go there. It's not covered.
Yeah, and we're going to see more and more of that. I've decided to change my topic here. We went through this a couple of decades ago when the rising healthcare costs forced everybody into HMOs, and in effect that's what's happening now at a national level. Basically all these plans are going to the HMOs, and already we're hearing the pushback from you and Dr. Albrecht. Do you think it's going to work? Do you think the pushback is going to make this thing implode to where it may not go back to the way it was, where we had more freedom to choose, but is it going to be so distorted that you wouldn't be able to recognize Obamacare the way it was originally passed?
I don't know. I can only hope. I mean, as somebody who wants to think on the positive side, I have hope that senators will pay attention to what people are saying and realize that passing this Medicaid-Obama expansion bill is going to hurt us all in the end. And that the Obamacare expansion, what Anthem has gotten away with, is hurting New Hampshire citizens. I have to hope that they will turn off the politician, turn on the human being, and really listen with an open mind.
Jen, I got to jump in. We're almost out of time. Could you please provide us with some contact information, how people can reach you, and we're going to be done after that.
Sure, absolutely. If they want to reach me, they can reach me at jencoffey.com, JenCoffey.com. Feel free to check me out on my website, contact page. Under my About, you can see my blog. If you do want to directly contact me, go to the contact page. You can shoot me an email or give me a call at 814-422-JEN. 814-422-JENN. Thanks, guys, for having me on.
All right, Jen, thanks so much for being a guest, and we'll hopefully have you on again soon.
Absolutely.
All right, have a great day. All right, that was Jen Coffey. I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy and Mike Rogers, who's checking on our next guest, and hopefully Dan Itza will be with us by phone or in person any minute now. In person in 2 minutes. He's huffing it up from wherever he found parking. All right, this is Rock Talk. We'll be right back.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
The Center for Redress of Grievances, LLC, was established officially November of 2012 for the purpose of becoming a media outlet for those individuals who believe and have documentation that they've been unjustly treated by local, state, or federal government agencies. Our mission is to document their stories and to get them out to the public. By collecting and organizing this data, the Center for Redress will be able to better show the public and our legislature that there are issues with some of our government agencies that may be widespread and need to be addressed. Although we are not a nonprofit, we do provide all of our services at no cost to our clients. All of our services may include screening interviews, documentation gathering, audio-video of court hearings, and production of Speak Up, which is our television show. We're funded exclusively through sponsorship of Speak Up and our advertisers on our website. We hope to help those individuals who, with well-documented stories, need to be heard with credibility when the other agencies and media sources turn a deaf ear to them. You can go to our website at www.centerforredress.com and check us out. Anything you would like to donate is truly appreciated, and we will put it to good use.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning. You're listening to GrokTALK.
Grok TV.